Aimsy here of Aimsy's Antics. Welcome to my channel. I hope you're well today because I have another sewing project to share with you today. And in today's video, I'm going to show you how to make a DIY wrap skirt with ruffle using the free sewing pattern Frankie wrap skirt by Madel Label, and it is just stunning. You've got a bit of a peek here of what it turns out like, and I'm using a viscose material here because that has got some lovely movement, draping and just swishiness to it, which makes the wrap skirt that much more beautiful and swishy when wearing. So if you would like to see how to make a DIY wrap skirt with a ruffle hem, then let's get crafting. So this is the pattern, the Frankie wrap, and you just download this, print it out, and then stick all the pattern pieces or pages together and then cut out the pattern piece. So as you can see, everything has been joined here by sellotape, and then you just follow the instructions of what is written on them. So for this one, I'm going to have to cut four parts for this, and then others you only need two, or you cut one for the back panel because it is on a fold. So I'm going to put it all onto the material and see how we go. The first thing to do actually is cut out the waistband from the measurements that they provide, because this is going to be the longest part of the skirt and where you need the most length of material. So always do that one first before cutting out the rest of these. But let's get into cutting out the pattern. So here I am just marking out the waistband, which is 10 centimeters wide by 220 centimeters long, and then cutting this out. Doing this first so that I have the remaining fabric to then cut out the rest of the pattern like this. So everything is cut out and it is time to start putting it together, but first we need to load up the bobbin and thread the needle. The majority of the wrap skirt is sewn together with French seams, so this means that it is a lovely encased seam, trapping them raw edges inside. So what you have to do is place the wrong sides of the material together, sew the seam, trim this down, flip it over and sew another seam on the right side, or wrong side, sorry, and it creates a really neat seam. So what I am doing first is connecting the back piece with the two side panel pieces, and then there are 4 parts to the frill that goes around the edge of the skirt, so I am connecting these together as well. And I am batch doing all of the French seams because it's easier to do everything at the same time. It just saves you a bit of time because you are basically double sewing the skirts, if that makes sense. So all 4 pieces of the frill have their first part of their French seam done. So this very long piece of material now. And then what we need to do is actually attach the 2 end pieces, again using the French seam. So let's get on to that bit, and then the frill should be finished and I can finish all of the French seams on everything that's been started to be French seamed, if that makes sense. So once all the first parts of the French seams are done, these are 1 centimeter width seams. You are then trimming them down by half, so half a centimeter, and then there's going to be another centimeter sewn once we have pressed it. So you've got to press the seam to set it and then press it to one side before folding the material to the wrong side, so right sides together, so the wrong side is facing up, as you would probably regularly sew. You always sew on the wrong sides usually. So you want to then press this, and we're going to sew another seam down that edge, again 1 centimeter, and it should capture in that raw edge that is folded under. Now I really like French seams, and it does take you a bit longer to put the garment together because you're essentially sewing 2 seams for 1 seam part, but it does give it a really nice professional finish, and you don't have to do any overlocking. It just encapsulates it all in, and I think it looks really neat and tidy. So I'm just finishing off the frill parts here and then heading back. And like I said, batch sewing these so that you're doing all the same parts together and you're not stopping and starting. It makes it so much easier because it does take a long process. And once all the seams have been completed, you then want to give these a press again, because pressing the seams helps set in the stitches. And then it's time for the worst part of this skirt, I think, is hemming the whole of the frill, because the frill is so long. You're gonna do a rolled hem, and because it is a curved seam, it does take a little bit of practice, but there is a tip. You want to dampen the material as you are pressing, so then it holds its shape. So you fold it once all the way around and then fold it in again on itself, so it sort of rolls itself in. Again, dampening and pressing this on the highest heat as you can to help it keep its shape before heading to the sewing machine and sewing a seam or a stitch right along that edge. So you want to be as close to the edge as possible, the inside edge should I say, and it just hopefully will go neatly. And take it slowly, because the curved parts are probably the most tricky and you may get some pleating, which you don't want to happen. So take it nice and slow and you should hopefully have a nice rolled seam. So success! It has sewn in really well. I mean, obviously there's a few uneven bits, but I am not going to complain about that. And then there is the odd little bit, let me find it, the odd little bit of pleating, but that's not going to be seen on the actual side, so I'm not too fussed about that. And actually I'm going to press this out, because that's maybe will just neaten it all up even more. So yeah, let's press it out. So pressing the hem can really help make it all set into place, and some of the mistakes do iron out, so some of them pleats may just smooth out if you iron it, so that's always good to have your iron on standby when you are sewing. Then with the back panel of the skirt at the bottom edge, I'm just marking out halfway or the center point of that back panel and repeating the same with the frill, so marking the halfway point of the frill. Then we're going to join these two together by matching up the two notches and pinning these all in place, because we're going to then French seam the frill onto the bottom of the skirt. And what is good about this frill, it is already hemmed because we've just spent all that time hemming it, and we don't have to do another hem. So we're placing these wrong sides together initially, sewing, then cutting and turning them to the right side and sewing again for that French seam. So I was pinning the frill to the bottom edge of the skirt, and I had a good chunk of the frill over on each side. So I am actually gathering in the frill a little bit. So I've done, I don't know if you can see, 2 rows of basting stitches, which are basically the largest stitch on the sewing machine, and these are then gonna form gathering stitches. What you need to do is leave a long tail of cotton on either end, because then you can pull these to gather the material to make it fit. So what I did first was mark, so I already had the halfway mark marked in the frill, and I've marked the quarter way mark on either side as well. So then I'm going to do the same with the skirt, making sure I've got the quarter mark, and then line these up, and then we can gather the frill in evenly to make sure it all fits in place. So if you make this skirt and you have this problem, you may have to do this. Apparently what causes sometimes the material to be longer than what you intended is the material moving once you were cutting it out of the pattern. So that's probably what's happened with me, because I was all over the place cutting this out. So let's get to attaching the frill. So now the seam has been gathered, everything is pinned together, it is then time to sew that French seam with the frill to the bottom edge of that skirt. So now the frill is attached by French seam to the bottom of that skirt, and the skirt is really starting to take shape. So now it's time to move on to the little bit more trickier part of connecting the waistband. So for this pattern piece you have 2 shorter pieces of the waistband and 1 long piece of the waistband. So what you want to do first is attach the 2 shorter pieces together with a French seam, and then I believe it is on the long part we are then going to connect the newly sewn short parts together and place this edge together, right sides together with the long waistband piece. And then using a ruler or measuring tape, we're going to measure 1.5 centimeters in from the edge and mark 2 centimeter points all the way down this edge. So I think you have about 4 points that you are marking here. Then with the 1.5 centimeter in from the edge, you mark this, and at the start of the fabric to the first interval you want to draw a line, then skip one of them intervals and then join the middle 2 pieces with a line together, skipping again and then joining the last notch to the edge of the fabric, if that makes sense. It's coming up now, and this is just going to create some gaps because we are going to end up sewing this, and this is going to form the opening for that wrap part, tie part of the skirt. So this bit is a little bit complicated to get your head around, but once you sort of do it you can see it taking shape, and it does make sense when you are doing it. So this is where we're going to start sewing that bit of waistband. So where the lines are is where we're going to sew, and where the gaps are, that is where you don't sew. So you want to back stitch the start and end of each stitch, because this is going to form the opening, so we need it really strong. So back stitching it at the start and end helps do this. And I'm just leaving my thread attached at this point and then trimming it down afterwards, but you can stop and start if you want, however you like to do this. Once that is done, we then want to press that open, and this is just going to help set in them stitches, and the whole part of the wrap skirt is finished and complete for this part. But what we're going to do is test it out by folding the waistband in half and lining up those 2 openings, and the hole for the wrap skirt should then be formed like so, and it's lovely and neat inside once it lines up properly. Now this bit got a little bit complicated for me and I had to really think about it, so I'm going to hopefully explain it well enough. So where that whole part we have just sewn is, we're going to line that up with the back panel seam that goes over to the front side, and this, the shorter side of where the hole is going to go over the front panel only, and then the long part is going to go over the back panel and the side panel. And then on both ends of the waistband we're going to use the measuring tape and measure 6 centimeters past where the skirt ends on the waistband. So where the frill starts, you then want to mark 6 centimeters over, and then mark on the skirt where the hole is going to line up. Then we're going to fold the waistband right sides together widthways and press this together, and then at the end we're going to cut a 45-degree angle on each end of that waistband, and this should give it that really nice diagonal part to the tie ends. Now from that mark that's just been created on the waistband, so when we've marked 6 centimeters along, we're going to start sewing from there and sew all the way along to the end of the waistband where that newly cut point part is, dropping the needle near the corner and twisting this to sew in the direction we want to sew, and this will give it that really nice diagonal look. Then we're going to trim that corner off once we have sewn it so that it sits nice and flat and you can push out the corner part of that tie, if that makes sense. So we're only sewing a little bit of the waistband at the moment, so from each side of the marks we're going to sew to the ends, and then so the middle of the waistband will still be open. Then the waistband is turned right side out and pressed from that corner so that it lies nice and flat, because once we get to the open part of the middle, we are then going to fold down each raw raw edge, sorry I can't speak, 1 centimetre in, so that it's going to create a little fold on either side, and this will sort of help capture in them raw edges when we are sewing it to the skirt. So from each open end we're going to do 1 centimetre in folded, if that makes sense. Then with the whole part of the waistband, we're going to line it up to that mark we made on the skirt and fold that 1 centimetre folded edge upwards and pin this into place. And then we're going to pin that all the way along the waistband as well, but making sure that that whole notch is lined up accurately, because it's going to throw it off if it's not. And then where that waistband is open and pinned, we're just going to sew a 1 centimetre seam all along that raw edge, so that one side of that waistband is connected, and then we're going to fold it over so that the notches of the hole line up and the folded in edge is sitting neatly against the other side of the skirt and waistband. So the skirt is sort of sandwiched in between the two halves of the waistband. So again, pinning it in place, making sure that them holes line up neatly, and then we're gonna sew along. But before we sew it, I'm just marking a square around that opening, because we're going to create some extra stitches around this just to strengthen that hole a little bit as well and keep it all in place once the skirt is sewn together. So from where the skirt is open, we're then just going to start sewing a seam close to the edge of the raw edge and carry this on along that waistband piece until the full waistband is in place on the skirt, and then finally going around that opening with a few stitches, back stitching, creating a nice square just to hold it all in place. And then once this has been sewn together, it's time to give the skirt a final press, making sure all the seams are set and all the wrinkles are taken out of the material. And then the DIY wrap skirt / Frankie wrap skirt is complete and ready to wear and be beautiful in the spring summer time. How to make a DIY wrap skirt with ruffle, perfect for wearing this spring summer season and just swanning around feeling beautiful in a lovely flowy skirt. I love how this has turned out, and it is a free sewing pattern, so be sure to check out Madel Label down below, because they have a few other patterns that aren't free but are equally stunning, and I have one of the dresses waiting to be made. And Madel Label also have a tutorial, so if you do get the free sewing pattern or any of their sewing patterns, there's no written instructions, it's all video instruction, so I will link down below for this Frankie wrap skirt there as well. Now it is really easy to make, but there's some little technical bits that I had a little bit of trouble with, and I always have had troubles with curved rolled hems, but they have a beautiful solution. So yeah, dampening the hem and then sewing it is the best way to go. Let me know what you think of this wrap skirt in them comments below. Will you be having a go at making your own? And if you do, don't forget to tag Madel Label in that, because I'm sure they would love to see your creations with their free pattern. And if you've enjoyed this video, then please do give it a big thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button to keep up with all of my creative and crafty antics coming up onto the channel. Whilst you're there, hit that notification bell as well, because that will alert you each time my videos go live. I also have a blog, Aimsy's Antics, which is a link down below and up above for you to check out, because sometimes there's a bit more information over on the blog than in the videos. And with that said, I will see you in next week's video, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and week, and I will see you next time. Bye!